I was halfway through my coffee when my brother's voice sliced straight through the buzz of the conference lobby. Relax, he told the little circle of people around him, loud enough for half the room to hear. She's just admin. Fancy badge, same old desk job. They laughed. It was light, casual laughter, the kind that says we're all in on the joke. And every chuckle landed on my skin like a slap. My name is Kira. For as long as I can remember, that's all I've been to my family. The helper. The organized one. The girl who answers emails, books flights, fixes everyone's mess quietly in the background. But today, I'm not just someone's little sister hovering on the edge of the conversation. I'm standing in the middle of a leadership summit my team helped build from the ground up, and my just admin brother has no idea what room he's really standing in. He's gesturing toward me now, still performing. She loves this stuff. Schedules, color coding, spreadsheets. I mean, hey, somebody's got to print the name tags, right? More laughter. My chest tightens, but this time I don't look away. I let myself stare back. Next to him, his wife tilts her head, studying me. Her eyes flick from my badge to the logo on the massive banner behind me, then back to my face. So, Kira? She asks, polite smile, curious eyes. What is it exactly that you do here? The entire circle goes quiet, waiting for me to mumble something small. Something that fits the story my brother has told about me for years. But that's not the story anymore. I take a breath. Years of swallowed words rise to the surface and sharpen into a single word that will change everything. I work in. If you've ever been underestimated, talked down to, or turned into the punchline at your own family gathering, this story is for you. Before I tell you what I said in that lobby, and what happened after that silence hit the room like a brick, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you love stories where quiet people get loud in all the right ways, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been someone's just something? Just a cashier? Just a mom? Just an assistant? I want to know how many of us are done being background characters in our own lives. All right, let's go back to where this started. Growing up, my brother David was the son our family orbited around. 2 years older than me. From the moment he glued baking soda and vinegar into a volcano for a school science project, everyone decided he was going places. David's the brains, my dad would say at every barbecue, clapping him on the shoulder. Kira's the helper. She keeps everything neat. Every great man needs a good assistant, my aunt joked once, ruffling my hair like I was the family dog. They laughed. I forced a smile and quietly collected the paper plates. It started small. When we were kids, I color-coded his school binders, typed up his essays when his handwriting was too messy, ran back to school when he forgot his homework. If I asked for help with my own projects, he'd shrug. Felix? Kya? You're good with organizing. I'm good with doing. By college, the script was carved into stone. David went off to study engineering. Everyone pitched in for his expenses. I took a job as a part-time receptionist and went to night classes because, as my mom put it, we don't need to pay for your degree, honey. You're practical. You'll always find admin work. People like you are everywhere. She meant it as comfort. It felt like a sentence. I still remember the first time David called me just admin to my face. He'd invited some friends home during spring break. They were talking internships, offers, big companies, big titles. One of them turned to me. What about you, Kira? Where do you work? I told them about the office. About how I did everything from scheduling clients to tracking expenses. How nothing moved if I didn't touch it first. David snorted. She's just admin, he said, not even looking at me. She keeps the printer from crying. The table erupted. My parents didn't say a word. So I laughed, too. Because what else was I supposed to do? Stand up and say, actually, your golden boy brother would crumble in a week if he had to do what I do? That phrase stuck to me like gum on the bottom of my shoe. Just admin. He used it at Christmas, weddings, family dinners. Anytime someone asked about my job. She's basically our in-house secretary. If you need your calendar fixed, Kira's your girl. They all smiled like it was affectionate. They never saw the way my shoulders tensed every time. What he didn't notice was that admin meant I sat in rooms he'd kill to enter. It meant I heard conversations executives thought no one remembered. It meant I knew who actually kept the company alive and who just liked to hear themselves talk in meetings. Admin taught me how power moves. I watched who signed what, who stalled decisions, who bailed when things went wrong. I built systems that made other people look brilliant and took notes on every pattern. I climbed administrative assistant, administrative coordinator, operations administrator, administrative operations manager. On paper, my titles got longer. My responsibilities got heavier. My bonuses got bigger. At home, I was still the girl they asked to send the family group email. I could have corrected them, pulled out my awards, my performance reviews, the emails from executives saying, "You saved this project." Instead, I swallowed it. It's just family, I told myself. It doesn't matter what they think. But it does. Because the more my career grew, the more his jokes stung. Not just as throwaway comments, but as proof that in his eyes, I would always be below him. Then my company restructured. A VP I'd worked with pulled me aside. "You see patterns other people don't," he said. "We're building a new department. Operations and acquisitions. I want you in the room, not just outside it." On paper, my new title was long and forgettable, Administrative Operations and Acquisitions Coordinator. In practice, it meant, I'm one of the people who decide which partnerships are worth our time, and which ones we kill. I didn't explain that to my family. Same job, different floor, I told my mom. She nodded, satisfied, and asked if I could help her book flights again. Fast forward to the morning of the summit. I was at the convention center before sunrise. The building felt half asleep, cleaning staff rolling carts down the hallway, technicians checking cables on the main stage. The smell of burnt coffee already hanging in the air. I swiped my badge. The security guard nodded as the scanner flashed green. "Morning, Fess. Anderson. Big day." Big day, I agreed. We'd spent 6 months planning this summit, designing the agenda with the executive team, vetting speakers, coordinating sponsors, and behind the scenes, evaluating which companies might be worth acquiring. I was leading the internal tracking for a slate of potential deals. One of those files had a logo I recognized instantly. My brother's company. Not his company, as in he didn't own it. He wasn't a founder. He was a senior project manager on a flagship product that had put them on our radar. When that file first landed in my queue, I stared at his name in the documentation for a long time. Any conflict of interest? My director had asked. "Do you and your brother talk shop?" "Idaloga." "No. As far as my family knows, I print name tags." "Good," he said. "Then give me your honest read. If the numbers stink, say so." So I did. Quietly. Months before the summit, I'd already flagged patterns, missed deadlines, overpromising, a culture of last-minute patches instead of real fixes, a worrying dependence on one project manager, David. By mid-morning, the summit was humming. The main stage lights were bright. A high-profile CEO was talking about invisible labor, the work no one notices until it stops happening. The audience laughed when she joked about calendars, magically managing themselves. I didn't laugh. I watched the crowd. Some executives nudged their assistants, grinning. Others shifted in their seats, uncomfortable. In any company, the speaker said, you can tell who understands leadership by how they treat the people who make their life easier. My eyes drifted across the room and landed on him. David, late as usual, sliding into his company's reserved row, lanyard swinging, charm turned up to full volume. He whispered something to the colleague next to him, and they both smirked. From where I stood at the back, it looked like the joke was about staff. Of course it was. During the coffee break, the lobby transformed into a maze of suits and egos. Laughter bounced off high ceilings. Business cards flew. People crowded around tall tables holding cups and pastries and their own importance. I was checking in with the AV team when I heard my name. I turned. Susan, my sister-in-law, was weaving through the crowd, a little breathless. You made it, I said, surprised. Of course, she smiled. David wouldn't shut up about this summit. Big dogs only, apparently. She rolled her eyes. Plus, I wanted to see you in your natural habitat. This is huge, Kira. You helped put all this together? Me and a lot of other people, I said. She gave me a look. I've seen your color-coded spreadsheets. I'm guessing you are a lot of other people. I laughed, a small knot in my chest loosening for a second. We chatted, safe topics, family gossip, until David appeared, arm immediately draping over her shoulders. There you are, he said to her, then glanced at me. Hey, little sis. Busy running the printer. The old script. Delivered without thinking. Something like that, I replied. More of his coworkers drifted over, drawn to his performance like moths to a porch light. He introduced Susan, bragged about his project, sprinkled buzzwords everywhere. At some point, one of them nodded toward me. Wait, is that your sister? Didn't you say she works here? Yeah, David grinned. She's one of the admin people. You know, coffee, chairs, name tags. She loves it. The group chuckled. Not malicious. Just lazy. The kind of laughter that says, we won't bother seeing you clearly if this easy label works. I felt the familiar burn in my throat, the urge to excuse myself, shrink, disappear into logistics. Over the speaker system, the announcer's voice echoed. Our next session begins in 10 minutes. I thought of the internal file, of my notes on his company, of the red flags with his name attached, of the CEO talking about invisible labor. Hey, Kira, one of his colleagues asked, smirking. Do you get to sit in any of the big kid meetings today, or is it mostly logistics for you? The old me would have laughed and made myself smaller. Depends what you mean by big kid, I said instead, my tone light but steady. Susan was watching me now. Really watching. Her brow furrowed. Something wasn't lining up with the story she'd been fed. Anyway, David cut in, clapping his hands. We should let her get back to her admin magic. If we talk to her too long, the pens might stop refilling themselves. Another ripple of laughter. Something inside me shifted. A quiet click. All the late nights. All the deals. All the executives who took my recommendations seriously while my own brother couldn't imagine I had any to give. Susan hesitated, then turned back to me. Actually, Kira, I've been meaning to ask you something. The volume of the lobby seemed to drop a few notches. You've seemed different lately, she said. More confident. And your emails about this summit sounded like you were running way more than coffee orders. So, what is it you actually do here? There it was. The question. A lifeline and a challenge. David laughed first. Babe, I told you. She's admin. She loves that stuff. Schedules, emails, behind-the-scenes magic. Right, Kira? For once, I didn't look at him. I looked at her, at the colleagues around us, at the badges hanging from their necks, loaded with assumptions. I thought about my own badge, the tiny printed title no one in my family had ever really read. The circle tightened almost imperceptibly, everyone leaning in. So, Susan repeated, softer now but more intent. What do you actually do? I set my coffee cup down, straightened my spine, stepped fully into the space I'd been shrinking away from my entire life. I work in acquisitions, I said. One word. You could feel it land. The conversations around us didn't just fade. They stopped. Someone at the next table dropped a plastic stir stick, and the sound was absurdly loud. Acquisitions. One of David's colleagues echoed, frowning. I nodded. Administrative operations and acquisitions. I help evaluate which companies we partner with, invest in. I held his gaze now. Or don't. The last word hung in the air like a loaded gun on a glass table. Susan's face went pale. Her eyes flicked from my badge to the logo on the banner behind me, then to the small symbol on her own lanyard marking her as a guest of David's company. You mean? She started, voice catching. Your team is the one that reviews proposals.
Due diligence.
Risk profiles. Yes, I said gently. I didn't add, and your husband's company is currently on that list. I didn't have to. One of his coworkers swallowed. So you're one of the people deciding whether to move forward with us. I'm part of the group that makes recommendations, I clarified. Final decisions are above my pay grade, but my analysis matters. The silence thickened. You never said that, Susan whispered. No one ever asked, I replied. Finally, I turned to my brother. For the first time in years, he didn't have a smirk ready. His mouth hung slightly open, as if the joke he'd loaded got stuck in his throat. Wait, he said slowly. You're telling me you're one of the people deciding if my company gets bought. I'm one of the people deciding whether your company even makes it past serious consideration, I said.
My voice stayed calm.
I've been tracking your delivery timelines and contract compliance for 3 months. His face flushed blotchy red. You're kidding. He stopped himself, but I saw the word flash across his eyes. Just admin. Except now the room knew better. One of his coworkers cleared his throat. We've, been hoping for positive feedback from your side. Leadership's pretty anxious about this deal. I tilted my head. I've given honest feedback. That's my job. Susan gripped her cup so tightly her knuckles whitened. Honest, she repeated. As in, not biased. Even with family? I don't let family relationships affect my assessments, I said. Your company's performance is what it is. And that was the moment David finally understood. I wasn't his personal assistant in the sky, quietly polishing his life. I was a name on the other side of the table. The speaker system chimed again, calling everyone to the next session. The lobby began to move, but our little circle stayed frozen. David, Susan said quietly. We should sit down. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, anger and shock and something that looked a lot like fear twisting his features. Because for the first time in our lives, he had no control over what I would say next. The rest of the summit passed in a blur of rooms and screens and sharp air conditioning. Early afternoon, I walked into one of the closed-door conference rooms on the top floor. Glass walls, polished table, water bottles lined up like soldiers. Our VP nodded at me. Kira, you've been handling internal coordination, right? Walk us through your latest summary before we hear their pitch. David wasn't there. This wasn't his level. But his name was all over the project packet in front of me. You might think I'd feel like I was holding his life in my hands.
I didn't.
I felt like I was holding a file.
Facts. Patterns.
Choices his company made, over and over. I laid it out. The missed deadlines. The last-minute patches. The staff burnout. The improvements that conveniently appeared only once we started looking at them as an acquisition target. Based on what we've seen, I said, I recommend that if we move forward, it's with strict conditions and a phase structure. Alternatively, I paused, then exhaled. We may want to reconsider whether this is the right fit at all, given the number of red flags. Our VP watched me. Is that still your view after meeting their team today? He asked. My mind flashed back to the lobby. To David's pens might stop refilling themselves joke. To his refusal to ever see what I really did. Yes, I said. It is. Their VP bristled. With respect, I'm not sure your operations coordinator has a full understanding of the strategic vision here. Our VP's tone turned to ice. With respect, we don't put anyone in this room unless their understanding is both deep and trusted. Kira has been one of the most reliable voices on our last 3 deals. Heat rose to my cheeks, but I kept my expression neutral. The meeting continued. Tense, professional, no shouting. We left with notes and a timeline for the final decision. In the hallway afterward, my boss caught my eye. You were solid, he said.
No vayas. Clear.
That's exactly what we need from you. Later, my phone buzzed with a text. David, we need to talk.
Now.
I found him on a small outdoor terrace off a side hallway, pacing like a caged animal. The city's skyline glowed behind him. So it's true, he said as soon as he saw me. You're one of the people trying to screw us. I'm one of the people trying not to screw us, I replied. My job is to tell the truth about the deal. That's it. You told a room full of suits my company isn't good enough, he snapped. You could have warned me. You could have what? Coached me? Helped me game the system? You already know your company cuts corners, I said. You're in the middle of it. This is my career, Kira, and this is my integrity.
He scoffed.
You always were the good little rule follower. So perfect and ethical, until it hurts me. I stared at him. You stood in front of your coworkers and your wife and reduced my entire career to name tags. That wasn't ethics. That was ego. Oh my God, you are really dragging that into this? Yes, I said. Because it's the same story. You only value me when I make your life easier. He went quiet. You could fix this, he finally said, lowering his voice, shifting from anger to persuasion. You don't have to lie, just
Lean.
emphasize the positives. Downplay the rest. Make it clear we're worth the risk. There it was. The assumption that I was still his helper, just at a higher level. Do you remember the first time you called me just admin? I asked instead. At that dinner in college? Your friends laughed. You never apologized. You've been doing it ever since. He rolled his eyes. That was forever ago. You're really going to tank my career over a grudge? This isn't a grudge, I said softly. This is a pattern. Your company burns people out and patches problems at 2 a.m. instead of fixing them. That's in the reports. That's what I'm responding to. If this deal falls through, I could lose my position, he said, voice cracking. I know, I replied. Maybe you should have thought about that before building your castle on chaos. His expression hardened. Don't come crying to me when this blows back on you. Mom and Dad are going to lose it when they hear you sabotaged your own brother. If they'd been paying attention, I said, they'd already know what I do. He yanked the door open and left, the slam swallowed by the hum of the summit. That night, I sat in my small apartment with the city humming outside and wrote my final recommendation.
No venom. No sugar coating.
Just facts. Given the persistent patterns of behavior documented above, I recommend we do not move forward with an acquisition at this time. I signed my name. I hit send. My hands were shaking, but they were steady, too. 3 weeks later, the decision arrived. After careful consideration, we've decided not to move forward with the proposed acquisition. My report wasn't the only factor. Legal, finance, external consultants, they all had concerns. But mine was one of the anchors. My phone exploded. Susan, did you hear about the deal? Mom, call me now. I let it ring. For once, I didn't rush to be available. When I finally picked up, Mom didn't even say hello. How could you do this? She demanded. Your brother is devastated. He says your company pulled out and that you wrote a terrible report about his work. I wrote an honest report, I said. You know how much this meant to him, she pressed. You could have helped. Just this once. I laughed, a small, tired sound. Just this once? Mom, I've been helping my whole life. That's literally the only role you've ever given me. This is different, she insisted. This affects his future. So does mine, I replied. If I lie in an official report because my brother doesn't like the truth, that affects my future, too. You've changed, she whispered, like it was an insult. You used to be so accommodating. Yes, I said. I know. She tried again. Families should protect each other. Families should respect each other, I said. You watched David tear me down in front of people for years and never said a word. That was just teasing.
To you.
To me, it was a reminder that I would always be second class in this family. Silence stretched. When was the last time you asked what I actually do at my job? I asked. She didn't answer. Exactly, I said. I'm not sacrificing my integrity, so you can keep pretending your son is perfect. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet and stared at my phone. A stream of texts from relatives lit up the screen, all suddenly very interested in my work now that it had inconvenienced their golden boy. I put the phone face down. A few days later, I met Susan at a cafe. She looked tired. According to your mother, she said, you've single-handedly ruined David's life. And according to you? I asked.
She sighed.
According to me, you did your job. And he's finally dealing with consequences he's dodged for a long time. She told me things I'd never heard. How he talked down to his own team, took credit for their work, dismissed junior staff. How often he complained about idiots in operations who didn't understand vision. He never connected that you're one of those operations people now, she said. In his head, you froze at 22. How's he handling being pulled off the flagship project?
I asked. Badly, she said.
But that's on him. We talked about boundaries,
Therapy.
the weird grief of realizing your family might never see you clearly, no matter how much you shine. Before we left, she squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, she said, when you said acquisitions in that lobby, I wasn't shocked you had power over his career. I was shocked I'd believed his version of you for so long. I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner. My throat tightened. Thank you, I whispered. Over the next few months, contact with my family thinned. They still sent pictures from Sunday dinners I wasn't invited to, still joked in group chats I'd muted. Mom would text, we miss you. When will you let this go? She never asked, what do you need from us? So, I built a life where I didn't have to be just anything. I poured myself into my role, not to impress them, but because I loved finally being seen where it mattered. I mentored younger admins, teaching them that invisible work is often the backbone of real power. I started saying no instead of automatically fixing everything for everyone. Sometimes late at night, I'd replay that moment in the lobby. The hush after my one word. The look on David's face when he realized I held a kind of power he couldn't charm or bully. Did it fix everything?
No.
There was no movie-style reunion dinner with apologies and hugs. But there was this. At a cousin's birthday months later, someone asked in that casual, dismissive family way, so, Kira, still our organized one? Keeping everybody in line at the office. A relative opened their mouth, ready to jump in with, she's basically. I work in acquisitions, I said clearly before they could. I held their gaze and smiled. I evaluate which companies make sense for us to partner with and which ones don't. It's a lot of responsibility. I love it. This time, when the room went quiet, it wasn't shock that I had power over my brother. It was the dawning realization that I'd had power all along. They'd just never bothered to look. So here's my question for you if you've stayed with me this far. Have you ever let someone else's version of you be louder than your own? A parent, a sibling, a boss, a partner? And what would happen if, just once, you answered for yourself instead? Maybe it won't make a conference lobby go silent, but it might be enough to make your world finally start listening. If this story hit a nerve, tap that like button so more people see it. Subscribe for more stories where the quiet ones finally get their say. And tell me in the comments, what's your just that you're done accepting? Because you're not just anything. And sooner or later, someone's going to find out the hard way.